Hello there. Oof. It is 6:10 p.m. Tuesday, the 10th of March, 2026, and I am chilling at a really cool spot at mile 170.1 on the Appalachian Trail. And wouldn't you know it, to get to this campsite, which, the funny thing about the Appalachian Trail to me, and this is like my general rule of thumb, but I like to point it out when it's like reasonably appropriate. Because again, I don't want to be out here being that kind of guy who's like, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing. I don't remember hardly any of this. And, it's such a big thing that I really couldn't. I think I could probably do this every single year for the rest of my life, and there would be large areas of it that I would completely be unfamiliar with, But I do like to say when people are like, hey, which way to the trail? Like if there's like a little area where, there's like a water source slightly off the trail or whatever, with the AT, it's like, well, whichever way looks hardest. Like that's how the Appalachian Trail works. Like, as long as you keep that in mind, like whichever way looks hardest is the right way to go, you probably won't get lost out here, And again, true to form, getting up here to this campsite, it was like a 0.3 or 4 mile, almost exclusively uphill slog. And I also had to carry my water for the evening and for whatever might be needed tomorrow. So it was also done with like 11 extra pounds. I don't even know. I have 2 liters, 3 liters, 4 liters, 4.5 liters. So that's a lot of weight. That's like, I don't know, 10 or 11 pounds. I can't do math super well. But yeah, it's just funny. That's one of my favorite things about the Appalachian Trail. It's like, well, if you're ever unsure, just ask yourself, what's the hardest thing that could be done? And whatever the answer is to that will probably be in line with the Appalachian Trail, either literally physically or just in terms of everything else you kind of experience out here. It's like, it's a great little crucible for being a human being and moving through space, Today was quite a day of space moving. I did 22.5 miles with 4,271 feet of elevation gain, and I had a 17.5 mile average pace, which is pretty good. Max elevation was 5,426, and I think that was probably Albert Mountain, which was fun to go up and over. And just for the sake of comparison, yesterday, oh, interesting, is this yesterday? Huh. Well, last night when I made my clip and it said that my average time was 24.5 minutes, I guess that was my total time, because now looking at it the day after, it just now finally synced. I didn't have very much service throughout the day. But I had 16:59 mile splits on average, which that's impressive. Like I thought yesterday was like a horrendous slog, and maybe it was, and that's why the time was faster, because I was like, I need to get to some water, my dude. But yeah, crazy enough, yesterday was 16 miles and it had 5,000 feet, and today was 22.5 miles and only had 4,200. So at least that part was correct experientially for me. But yeah, quite a day. I set myself up to sleep here specifically, which is really a nice spot. Like there's no one else out here, at least right now. And there's not really enough room for another person. If someone else showed up, room could be made, but it's pretty much a single occupancy kind of situation. But it's pretty high up. If there was a view to see, I'd probably be able to see it. I'm 4,100 feet up, and I think it'll just be kind of an appropriate spot for me, like just it kind of fits with the general vibe. And I wanted to be here because I basically don't have enough food. I should rephrase that, because that's a defeatist way of describing it. I have just enough food to get to the road crossing at Winding Stair Gap tomorrow, which is only like a paltry 3 miles from here, which is pretty sweet. And I have to say today as well, I went through several areas that I had helped maintain. This final climb being one of them. It was actually the first place I ever saw one of the Sawyers with the trail maintenance crew, the people who actually carry chainsaws and stuff. He kind of walked me through. Shout out to God, give me a second. It's not your fault. Horn Bill. Shout out to Bill. He explained. Drinking whiskey. He explained a lot of the physics behind like properly cutting trees, which is like not something I had ever necessarily thought about, but as he explained it, I was like, oh yeah, that like it makes sense that like you wouldn't just go cut a tree and then just like pray for the best. Like, there's very specific, especially in like wildlife management areas. I keep feeling like I hear somebody. I should go take a look because I couldn't have gotten very far. If someone is coming up this way, I'd rather be aware of that ahead of time, but it could have also just been an aminal. Oh, I think it might actually just be trees rubbing. That's hot. A little squeaky squeak, you know what I'm saying? Out here in the middle of nowhere. Wow, this is like a very romantic, like, ray of sun coming down right now. It was pretty overcast all day. But I suppose we'll get to that soon enough. I kind of like it over here more than where I was. Over where I am, like I'm trying to get out of the wind a little bit so I can stay warm. But with the sun out like this, and it's only, 5, whatever it was, like the sun, if it stays, which it probably won't. In fact, it's getting covered up by clouds right as we speak. All right, bye. Love you, bye. Yeah, there could be some rain blowing in. It's hard to say, hard to tell. I guess I'll go back to my little corner. But yeah, it was cool to go through some of these areas that I had more recent memories of doing this trail maintenance. And I'll tell you too, going through the trail and seeing all of the actual infrastructure that people have put in, it gave me a completely different perspective on how difficult some of these projects must have been. Oh, now I'm seeing that someone has like pooped over here. Maybe I'll go somewhere else a little bit. Gotta love that. Didn't bury it or anything. Lucky us. There's like a sort of a soiled napkin looking thing. Gotta love people, we all make such good choices all the time, myself included. But yeah, maybe where would be a better spot to sit? That other spot was already feeling lame, and then I saw that someone had made it even worse than that. I guess I'll try this log for a second. See if it's acceptable. It's certainly flatter, which is nice. The other stick that I was sitting on should have known something was up because it was kind of angled, which, I'm trying to keep 10 toes down, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, very cool to go through a bunch of different areas that I have like very specific memories of doing things in. Just fun, nostalgic. Kind of feels like, I don't know, going to a summer camp that you used to go to when you were a kid, and just being like, oh, that's where I did this thing or that thing. For instance, I think it was Carter Gap Shelter, one maintenance day, which for me it was every Wednesday in February, and then maybe even one in January, I can't remember, but one of those days we went to that shelter, and there was a big tree limb that had fallen on the roof, and shout out to Paul. Paul is an 80-year-old man. Ugh. This stuff tastes so bad. Paul is an 80-year-old man, and I'll tell you, he could give a lot of people my age a run for their money. This guy can break rocks. This guy can hike trails. This guy is living life. He's got a hot tub. He's got a cat. He's living the dream, right? And I was with a couple of other guys at the Carter Gap Shelter, and we were trying to figure out how we could, safely get the limb off of the roof of this shelter. And then Paul comes up a little while later, and he was looking at the situation, and he's like, well, I'll scramble up there, and I'll try to get it off. And I was like, dude, I am the youngest person here by at least 2 times, and with Paul, more than 3. Well, that's not true. Less than 3, but you know what I'm saying. And I was like, if anyone needs to be scrambling up on that roof, it should be me because, like, the consequences of errors are less. And so he inspired me through his own, because, I was up there and I'm a troubleshooter. I'm a problem solver in my own right, in my own life. And I desperately wanted to get that limb off, but suffice it to say, some of the other people had some misgivings about that idea, but like going on top of the roof. But then Paul volunteering to do it and also having like this certain type of seniority where it's like, well, are you really going to tell a man who's like 20 years older than you? Speaking of some of the people who I was working with, like, can you really tell someone like that, no, don't do that? I mean, we did tell him, no, don't do that. But that was, if I hadn't been there, I don't know. Maybe Paul would have crawled up on top of the roof and started kicking it like I did. But yeah, that was just fun. And again, we're only a handful of feet away currently from the tree that Bill cut down, and he taught me a lot about the philosophy and the way of cutting trees in that process. It was very cool. And then we walked all the way to Winding Stair Gap ourselves, and I'm not entirely sure. It's got to be less than 3 miles, I guess. Yeah, my plan in the morning is to wake up relatively early, 2.5 miles, 758 feet of descent, 276 feet of ascent. But yeah, my plan tomorrow is to pretty much get up and get out, like, kind of ASAP. Like, no luxuriating tomorrow because tomorrow's a town day, and it pays to be in town longer than it does to be in my tent. So I plan to kind of just get up and get out as quickly as I can, reasonably speaking, and head for Winding Stair Gap. And at Winding Stair Gap, there's actually a piped spring that is very reliable. And as long as the weather is good, I can like hang out there and just have a cup of coffee and wait for the shuttle to arrive. Macon County has a shuttle that services Winding Stair Gap and brings people to Franklin on a schedule, and I can get there. I think the shuttle gets there at like 9:30, but I'm basically just gonna, as soon as I get up, start packing up and getting out and things like that. I hope the weather is good. I have service up here, so I'll be able to look into that. I should also be able to tend to all my digital needfuls, which have been, well, I haven't been able to. Last night, wherever I slept, where did I slept? Oh yeah, I was in that campsite. That had no service. That was definitely in some kind of a bowl of some sort. And so, yeah, I guess I'll go over my day. Ugh. 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 It tastes like it's almost like something you shouldn't drink. Yeah, I woke up this morning at like, I don't know, 7:50 or something like that, as the sun was getting up and waking up, rising. And yeah, it was rainy all morning, and it actually came in a couple of different bursts where it was pretty intense rain, or at least not so much intense maybe, but rain enough to where I was like, man, like, I'm not getting up and getting out into that for no reason. Like, there's absolutely no impetus for me to like rush out into this, especially if I have all of the things that I could need for a nice morning. So I hung out in my tent, let all that kind of junk roll through until basically I had finished everything to my satisfaction, and then there was nothing left to do but leave. So I packed up a wet tent and hit the trail, and it was a pretty ethereal walk throughout the day. I actually started the day with my rain jacket and with one trekking pole, so I packed one up and put it away. And then I had my umbrella that was close at hand in case one of those big kind of deluges came again. But it was not to be. There was really no considerable rain today. Like, it sprinkled on and off, but in my reading of the weather up to this point, most of what I've seen in terms of rain is like very, very low accumulation. So it'll look overcast all day, and it might sprinkle on you briefly, maybe a little harder in certain areas like on ridges and stuff like that. But by and large, like, you're going to be sweatier at the end of the day than you will be wet from rain. So I don't take a lot of precautions in those kind of circumstances, because I'm just like, I'm out here to walk, and like, pretending like staying dry is an achievable goal is really, really wishful thinking. So I'd rather just embrace the fact that there will be perhaps more moisture And if anything, I'll have my umbrella to at least like keep my head out of the rain. It's really not even something that I'm using to practically stay dry. It's like literally I just don't want rain pelting my face because that just is so demoralizing. I said this to a group of hikers the other day as I passed them, and they commented on my umbrella. But I was like, as a cyclist especially, I realized almost instantly the first time I ever encountered like a consistent and heavy rain that like Chinese water torture must be a very, very effective way of driving people crazy because there's no pain to it. It's just like these annoyances over and over and over and over again to where it's like, I wish this would just kill me and then I'd be done with it. But yeah, so the the rain, the umbrella, that's the thought behind it as far as I'm concerned. That reminds me too, that guy who I met yesterday, K-Dot, shout out to K-Dot. I don't know if he's going to go by that name, but it doesn't really matter. He said something funny where like, he was like talking about how difficult one of the climbs was. And he was like, man, if I died doing this climb, I'd kill myself. And I was like, that's hilarious. Like, I know exactly what he means. But I just like the idea just because it's so logically fallacious. You can't die twice, my dude. But I totally agree with and get the sentiment. So it's just funny, People are funny, pooping behind logs and all that kind of stuff notwithstanding. So, yeah. Pretty much a heads down affair. Like I really do like this kind of like structure that I have for my days where it's like 1-3-ish hour push basically just eating my honey coffee combination along the way for energy, and then getting to have lunch around midday, and then doing 3+ hours after that. Today I could definitely feel it. Like there's this funny interesting psychological thing that happens where like my backpack actually starts to feel heavier even though it's not. I mean, granted, climbing up to this campsite, it definitely was heavier than it was on any other part of the day, but yeah, like having that lunch and then pushing on for the rest of the day, it's just like it's a good balance, like I still think that the way that I'm doing this is very, very sustainable and enjoyable, but today was a little bit more because I needed to set myself up for an easy tomorrow, which tomorrow will be a Nero day for sure. Like I don't know how many miles I'm going to get. I don't really care, but I certainly will not have 20, and I am at peace with that. When all of the planets align and everything is in its right place, 20 miles is a really good goal, and it's most likely achievable with the system that I have. But, when other things crop up, which is the best part of the Appalachian Trail, that take priority over distance, then those things should be relished because the distance will be there. That's not going anywhere. I could do 90 more 20-mile days, but it's nice to have 20 or 30 days that are less than that and really be able to enjoy the fruits of the labor. Helps everything stay fresh in my experience. So, yeah, the first 3 miles, not too much to report. Went up and over Standing Indian, met a woman at Carter Gap Shelter, which is another place that I was familiar with, and I went and checked on the Privy roof, which had that same storm, had a branch break part of the roof and some of the rafters within the structure. All of that's still broken, but I'm sure my folks will get to it soon enough. Shout out to the NOC Trail Maintenance Club. Y'all are the best. That was a really fun way to spend my Wednesdays. Like, if I was actually retired in a more meaningful sense, I feel like this is just me, like, testing it out. I certainly would join as many trail maintenance clubs as I could and try to flesh out my week with, like, doing that kind of work because, man, that kind of work makes you happy when you're not doing it anymore. And that's the kind of work I really like doing. Like, once you finally can stop and you just breathe out, like, like, that was good, but I'm also glad it's done. That's the best kind of work to me. But yeah, so met that woman briefly at the shelter. It's the only thing I can think of that was like slightly interesting about the walk. And then I took a 45-minute break at a water source. That was kind of a trickle. It took a long time to even collect a single liter. And then pressed on. And 15 miles into the day, I had to climb Albert Mountain, which, as far as I understand, is the steepest 0.1 miles on the Appalachian Trail. I think that you climb somewhere between 500 and 800 feet. I don't know. Notebook LM, can you help? How many feet do you climb when you go up Albert Mountain? But it's very, very steep. It's very, very brief. And yeah, I was actually there not so long ago. I biked up to Albert Mountain. And I crossed over the road that I biked up there on several times while hiking. And again, just had another like nostalgic kind of moment where it's just like, I know this area. I recently was here and I remember what it was like, you know. And so yeah, Albert Mountain was good. I think that was kind of the pinnacle of the elevation, as I mentioned already today. It was like, I don't even know. It was over 1,000 feet of descent between Albert Mountain and here. And then obviously I had to come up a couple hundred feet just to get to this campsite, which I really do like this campsite. It's on a ridge. So, you know, that means that the land falls away precipitously on both sides, which I guess if this is north, that would mean on the east and the west side of this ridge, the land just falls away quickly. And that usually means that the wind is a little bit more active here. You know, there's some sort of pressure situation going on as the breeze blows across the mountains, and it constricts it up at the ridge because it's like everything is being brought together. And so there's usually always a breeze on ridges. In my experience, I don't know if that's technically true, but my tent is still pretty wet from earlier today, so I'm happy that, you know, it's getting a blowout or whatever they call it. So yeah, Albert Mountain was certainly a formidable climb as per usual and as to be expected. I personally thought that it ended faster than I thought it was going to. It was very, very steep, but honestly, I would take Albert Mountain's climb today over several of the climbs that I did yesterday. Maybe that's because of the water and the heat. You know, like I said, we humans develop grudges based on the weather and our other immediate surroundings and circumstances. So I don't actually know if the areas that I went up yesterday are objectively difficult or if I've just been underprepared every time I've done them. Who knows? I'll have to do it again and compare notes. But yeah, so Albert Mountain, then a really, really long, pretty gradual descent all the way to here. I think this is like I guess it's closer to 7 miles farther north from Albert Mountain. Let's take a look real quick. Just because, hey, you know, what, you got somewhere to be? I don't. 7.2 miles behind me is Albert Mountain, and if you were to go southbound, you would have to climb 2,000 feet, which means I went down 2,000 feet, 2,047 feet to be exact, and I would have to climb 1,000 feet. So that's kind of interesting just to know that. But yeah, Albert Mountain is also mile 100 on the Appalachian Trail, so I am now 100 miles into the trail, which is cool. I think I'll be in the Smokies by the end of the week, which is pretty crazy. At this pace anyway, unless something changes, which it always can, and I'm here for it. So yeah, from Albert Mountain, it was just kind of a chill walk. I'm listening to a really good episode of Joe Rogan right now where he's interviewing Sadhguru. Shout out to my dude Gabe. I don't think I ever listened to this episode fully because they spend probably the first 20 minutes talking about soil, and like Sadhguru talking about how, like, you know, soil, especially in the United States, has been corrupted because of monoculture farming, and how we don't have the ability to connect with the microorganisms that live within the soil because we're constantly tilling the same land over and over again and then using chemical interventions in order to fertilize it. We're not actually using the vast interconnected network of microorganisms to grow food that would be more hardy, basically. He made some pretty big claims about like, vitamin content of food and like how, well, he said if you were to have eaten an orange in 1920, in order to have the same amount of nutrition, you would have to eat 8 oranges today. I have some misgivings about believing that that's completely true. Not to say that I think that it's false, but hearing that, I'm just like, well, based on what are you basing that on? He didn't go into like vitamin C content or sugar fiber content or water content or size. So I'm not really sure what exactly you'd have to eat 8 oranges in order to achieve from one. I like Sadhguru. He's a cool, and that's Sadhguru. So he's not actually a sad boy, but he's something like that. But yeah, I don't really know what his metrics are. I enjoy his message, but I don't know the metrics. There's something there. Let's take another baby sip of this Evan Williams. Ugh. God, that's so gross. I mean, I like espresso, but I don't like to drink it like by itself, And I like alcohol, but man, drinking something like whiskey is just like, ugh, this is like, you guys are almost making me not want to do this. You guys being, I don't know, distilleries, I guess. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, so Sadhguru was my companion for like the last, 7 miles of my walk, and that's like over 2 hours, so maybe it wasn't Sadhguru the whole time, because I don't think this episode is even that long. Well, yeah, the whole episode is 2 hours and 56 minutes, and I only have 25 minutes left. So I guess he was with me the whole time. You can do the math. And yeah, I knew comically and karmically that getting to this campsite, that it was going to be like probably not the hardest part of the day, but it was going to be a difficult thing at the end of the day, because I was like, I'm going to have to carry all my water. I don't exactly know where this campsite is, and I'm sure if the Appalachian Trail is worth its salt, that it's going to be a real slog. And it was, but it wasn't that bad. I was kind of surprised. Just, that knowledge that after getting 11 pounds of water or whatever it is, like, I just knew that the only thing that I needed to look out for now was what would be a very obvious campsite. And so I was like, well, it doesn't really matter how heavy it is. Like, it doesn't matter how steep it is. Like I'm done. Like, that's kind of a thing on the bike ride too. Like, I would just, I would have like 30 miles left, and I'd be like, oh, I'm basically already there. Like 30 miles, like, knock on wood, but there's like absolutely no reason outside of catastrophe that 30 miles should defeat me. And similarly, like today, the last 7 miles, I was like, well, 7 miles is like longer than I wish it was, because it's like, walking is really slow and really hard. But it's also, I've already done 15 miles, so it's not like 7 miles is going to break the bank. Like, I have a pretty good system, as I've mentioned, and I have faith in the environment to, not necessarily facilitate my movement, but I guess I know that, it's not going to be easy, and so it's not surprising that it's hard. So I guess like my expectations are in line with reality, Yeah, so that's my life, and I'm sticking to it. As for the things that I wrote down today, which were quite a few, let's see if I can do this. Okay, so this is kind of a weird one. Buckle up. So there's a guy named Robert Sapolsky who I like a lot. He's like, I don't know what his actual credentials are, but he's definitely, at a minimum, a primatologist. So he has spent a lot of time in Africa studying baboons. And one of the things he specifically studied was like the hierarchy within primate cultures, and the stress levels that like alphas versus betas versus all the other ones. Like, he kind of road mapped like how all of those relationships kind of work within those societies. And he wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And that book is kind of an examination of like what chronic stress does to an organism, and why human beings are unique in the fact that we carry around basically trauma for longer than the traumatic incident would actually require. And I was just interested, like, experimentally, and of course I wouldn't want this to be done, but just purely as like a for instance, I wondered if you were to take a zebra and for the first year of its life you somehow tortured it for like an hour every single day at the exact same time. I wonder if that zebra would actually have like a persistent kind of PTSD if you were to then set it free and measure its cortisol and all those kinds of things. Like, would it have panic attacks, basically, or would it be more prone to something that could be called depression? Because I thought about it, and I was like, well, you know, in nature, like, you either win or you lose. I feel like humans have introduced a new gradient of success where you can like kind of fail but kind of succeed, and like you don't lose your life because of it. But in nature, like the whole point of Robert Sapolsky's book was like, you know, a zebra gets chased by a lion, and the zebra either gets killed by the lion or it gets away. And so, you know, there's like a lot of stress response for a very brief amount of time, and it concludes in those two ways, either through death or through evasion. And with human beings, it's like, well, that's the contrast there, is that human beings, we continue to suffer even after the initial insult. And so I was wondering, well, okay, fair enough. That's a pretty simplistic like way of looking at nature as like a more honest version of like suffering, because again, you either win or you lose. But if you were to, again, like psychologically and physically torture an animal, then would they be more like us? Would that zebra then have panic attacks? Like, I would be interested in Robert Sapolsky doing a follow-up book where he explained that, like, you know, animals that experience consistent suffering, like, do they have panic attacks? I think in nature they would simply just die because they would make a mistake at some point because they were so focused on their traumatic anxiety or pain or whatever it was, that eventually they would make a mistake and they'd be easy prey. But yeah, it kind of led me to wonder, like, like if civilization was stripped away and human beings were on a level playing field with all of the other animals, I wonder if some of the mental afflictions that we have would actually not ever occur because we would likely already be dead, because they would have already manifested in a way that would have prevented us from successfully, you know, evading the Grim Reaper, as it were. A little morbid, but, you know, still, I wonder. Oh, man. Social things must be learned, otherwise you're failing at theory of mind. Yeah, I was thinking about hikers today, and like, you know, people who think that they have like a superior way of doing things, and that they like might begrudge others for not realizing something. I guess maybe, I don't remember when I had this thought, but I think it was because there were some day hikers going by. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, on trail, it is etiquette, polite etiquette, to allow people who are going uphill to pass you if you're going downhill, because they're putting in more effort. And if you have to make them stop, it's more, you know, more of a struggle to get going again. And I never knew that. I'd never heard about that. I didn't hike a lot before doing the Appalachian Trail. So it wasn't something that I knew as like decorum. And I don't know how many times I violated it. But yeah, I was thinking, you know, that's not something people are born with, the knowledge specifically of that exact moray. And I don't think that people are born with the knowledge of any morays. And if you hold that against people, rather than being like graceful about others' ignorance, then it puts you in a negative headspace that is actually just like the result of your own inability to be empathetic and compassionate. So yeah, like if you ever look at someone and think that they don't have any common sense, like that's actually a privilege, because if you think that you know something that makes you a better person, that isn't actually universal knowledge. I don't, outside of like suckling at a teat and putting your hands in front of you when you fall reflexively, I think most things are learned. And so if someone doesn't know anything or know something, that's not their fault. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, some days you can afford to leave late, others you can't, and I love that anti-routine. Yeah, the Appalachian Trail is like so good for structure, adaptable structure. Like you really do have to have a certain type of a system in order to make your way all the way to Maine and to feel good about it, for as much as you can of that journey. And I also love, as with, so today I could afford to luxuriate because it was like, well, there's no reason whatsoever to rush out into the rain. Like that just sounds like a recipe for misery, and no one's making me do it except for myself if it comes to that. And so why do it? Just enjoy where you're at and just hope that the conditions improve by the time you're ready to not be there anymore. And even if they don't, it's like, well, what? I don't have anything to do here, so the novelty is better than the routine in that respect. Ugh. God, this stuff is. Ugh. This stuff is bad. Yeah. The last thing that I thought about today, that I wrote down anyway, was a bit of entrepreneurial flair. I had this thought. I was like, I really like this caffeinated honey, carbonated honey, and I was like, I could see this being a product, and like one that specifically is geared towards backpackers, etc. And so I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter because it's unlikely that I'll pursue it, but yeah, I was thinking it would be called Buzz Bee Energetics, so like a bee with a buzz. And I was having all these thoughts about like different flavors that I could make, like seasonal things, like what's that, pumpkin spice latte, spiked honey with caffeine in it, spiked with caffeine, and then also like a cayenne variety, because I was eating it today and I was like, this would probably be pretty good with some cayenne pepper in it, like a little bit of spice just to kind of, I don't know, enliven the senses. And then I started thinking about like marketing stuff for it, and what the mascot would look like. I named him. His name is Buzzy, and I'd want him to be like a over exaggerated like caricature of a bee that's like really strong but has a really small head. And I like the idea of making multiple different versions of Buzzy on the packaging, where he's doing different activities and just like dominating athletically, like swimming, biking, hiking, and I just think it would be fun. But we'll see about all that. I don't know what the market share and the market cap is for energy products. I know that's probably a pretty saturated market to even look at, but it was a fun thought because I was like, yeah, it would be cute. And I also just like the product. Like, eating honey, caffeinated honey has been my snack in between large meals. And I have to say, it's been very satisfying. Like, I haven't really been excessively hungry out here, which is kind of surprising because, I'm burning a lot of calories every single day. And this could be something that changes in time, because hiker hunger is a real thing that develops over time as you continue to do this kind of activity. But I have not felt so drowned in the desire to eat. I know, listening to my older clips from 2022, when I did the Appalachian Trail last time, food was front of mind a lot of the time, and out here really hasn't been. And I don't know how much to attribute that to this specific concoction, but I will say that this specific concoction has certainly gotten me through to this point. I'm basically eating like a half pound of honey every day, and Yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad. But that's another thing that I was thinking too. I was like, oh, what would be great is if this was infused with electrolytes and like vitamins and minerals. And so it'd be sort of like a health tonic, and could make different varieties of sizes for different activities. And, basically just following the Cliff Bar example of marketing and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. If someone wants to steal the idea, I guess this is my submission of the poor man's patent. So I had the idea first. I'll see you in court. But yeah, just something I thought about today. And that pretty much brings us to where we are now, which is 6:50 p.m. I'm ready for dinner and to get cozy, and also hoping that some of these bugs that keep flying around my head leave me alone. But yeah, I will get back to you tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to another good day on trail. It'll be a shorter day, but I'm looking forward to that too. So, with that, I'll leave it there for now. Love you. Bye.